What can I say? What can I tell you? Hamlet, the Prince of Denmark, has been called home from Wittenberg, where he's been studying for several years. Wittenberg, the center of revolutionary thought, beginning with Martin Luther. You've all heard of him. And he's called home to Elsinore because his father died suddenly in his sleep, taking a nap in the garden after lunch. Bitten by a snake, they say. But after the funeral, much to his surprise, he was not offered the crown. His uncle had arranged with the powers to be that he was more experienced and he would make Hamlet next in line. He wouldn't break the line, but he was, after all, the brother of the king, and so he became the king. And then, a few weeks later, he married the widow, Hamlet's mother, and Hamlet is not happy when he's alone. After the court has all left, he turns to the audience, which is you, and he says, "Oh! This is too solid, flesh would melt!" Thaw! And resolve itself into a dew. Whether the everlasting had not fixed his canon against self-slaughter. Oh, God! How weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world. Fie on it! Fie! It's an unweeded garden. It goes to seed. Things rank and gross in nature possess it merely that it should come to this. But 2 months dead, not so much, not 2. So excellent a king. It was to this, Hyperion, to a satyr, so loving to my mother, that he would not let the winds of heaven visit her face too roughly. Heaven and earth, must I remember. She would hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on. And yet within a month, let me not think on it. A little month, or ere those shoes were old, with which she followed my poor father's body like Niobe, all tears. Oh God, a beast that wants discourse of reason would have mourned longer. Married with my uncle? My father's brother? No more like my father than I to Hercules. Within a month. Or ere the salt of most unrighteous tears had let the flushing in those bloodshot eyes. She married. It is not, and it cannot come to good. But break my heart, I must hold my tongue. Enter Horatio, old friend from Denmark and old friend from Wittenberg, who has not made his presence known until now, but now he tells Hamlet, last night he saw his father's ghost. Not Horatio's father, Hamlet's father. The ghost did not say a word, and perhaps if Hamlet would accompany them tonight, and would he? And there they are. Ooh. The air bites shrewdly. Ooh, it's cold. The silence of the night is now interrupted by kettle drum and trumpet. Oh, the king, carousing late tonight. And when he drains his Rhenish down, the kettle drum and trumpet will blare out like that in celebration of his pledge. Oh, these stupid rebels. They ruin our reputation. Nations, east and west, now say that we are rowdy drunkards. They sneer at our achievements, our gift from him. There are those who carry an evil trait from their birth, not of their choice. And from that trait, when they are overtaken by a disgusting habit, they are blamed for their inheritance. And as if speaking the magic word, enter ghost. There he is. He beckons. He wants Hamlet to follow him. He does. And he tells Hamlet that he was not bitten by a snake. The snake was his brother who poured poison in his ear. And he fully expects that Hamlet, being his only son and heir, will avenge him. He wants revenge now. Well, that's a heavy packet, because if he kills the king, if Hamlet does follow what his father wants him to do, he'll be dead in a minute. Nobody will allow him to walk away from that. But then the ghost says something else before he leaves, and that's really much more interesting. He says, if thou hast nature in thee, let not the royal throne of Denmark be a couch of lechery and damned incense. Did I say incense? Incest. Howsoever thou makes this act, taint not thy mind, nor let thy soul contrive against thy mother aught. Leave her to heaven. Adieu, adieu, remember me. Well, I would like to stop there for a minute, because a friend of mine, Eric Wenberg, has taught me to read Shakespeare as a domestic writer. And it's helped me understand this play, because Hamlet essentially has three problems. It made it easier for me to focus. His mother, his uncle, and his father. Ophelia is something else, but she's not family. Family is his problem, as it is for most of us. And so the first thing we've heard from him is his mother is driving him crazy by marrying his uncle. And he suspects her of being lecherous. She hung on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on. Oh, I left out a line. Oh, post with such, oh, wicked speed to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets. I'm glad I could put it in. But here we are. The ghost has said, don't blame her. Don't do it. Let heaven take care of what she's done. And in fact, Hamlet has just before this said people do inherit addictions that they can't control. A rather modern thought, isn't it? And so I'm skipping to Act 3, Scene 4 in a 5-act play, in which Hamlet finds himself alone with his mother, telling her what he said he would not tell her. He does open his tongue and he says, look at this king and look at that and look at your husband. How could you do this? How could you marry him after having on and on? And she says, you turn my eyes into my soul, and there I see such black and grained spots as will not leave their tinct. And then the ghost comes in. The ghost comes in to warn him that he's not following orders, that he's busy now with the mother when he should be killing the king. But she doesn't see the ghost. She thinks her son is crazy. Who are you talking to? She says. He says, can't you see it? No, it's your madness. He says, I'm not crazy. She said, yes, you are. And he turns on her and he says, you are the one. Just must mend your fences. You must ask heaven for forgiveness for what you've done. You must clean yourself. Oh, Hamlet, she says, you have cleft my heart in twain. And instead of being sympathetic and piteous, he pushes on. He says, oh, throw away the worser part of it, which must get a reaction. She must sit up and look at him in shock. And then he says, and live the purer with the other half. Shock number 2. What is he talking about? Good night, mother. He's going to walk out on her after that? Well, no, he doesn't. He comes back. He says, but go not to my uncle's bed. Ha-ha. Assume a virtue, if you have it not. For habit, though it be the very devil, can be an angel yet in this, that with repeated actions, pure and good, he gives you then a better gown or cloak, which is not hard to wear. Abstain tonight, and lend a kind of easiness to the next abstinence, and the next more easy, for this practice will change the stamp of nature, and you may master the devil or throw him out with wondrous potency. Well, how did Hamlet ever know about the 12-step program is what I want to know. That was 400 years ago. And he's talking abstinence. He's talking addiction. He's talking just for today. He's saying all the things that we consider, and some people still think is way too modern, back then. Now, there is his problem. I'm glad that I can give it to you that simply. He's come back from Wittenberg, as we all did when we came home from university, to a home that was not prepared to hear the way we think. And he says, as we all experienced in our day, the time is out of joint. A father who says, revenge me now, is talking to somebody who would sit and discuss it with his philosophy professor. And that's just what Hamlet wants to do, but he doesn't know. He says, oh, cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right. And so, lacking a philosophy professor, he uses us, his audience. And he says, to be or not to be? That's the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and live, or take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them to die. To sleep no more. And by asleep, to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to, 'tis a consummation devoutly to be wished to die. To sleep perchance to dream, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, may give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time? The oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, his contempt, the pangs of disprized love, the law's delay, the insolence of office that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his own quietus make with a bare bodkin. Now, I've got to stop and tell you that everybody I spoke to when I worked on this piece thought that quietus meant peace, and that his own quietus means that he would kill himself. Well, that's not true. Quietus was a legal term. It meant the settlement of a debt. Quietus is what was given when a prisoner finished his term. Quietus is what was issued when a debtor paid his bills. He's not talking about killing himself. He's talking about revenge. Who wouldn't get revenge but for the fear of something after death? Oh. Who would fardels bear? That's a large bundle. Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life but the fear of something after death, that undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus, conscience does make cowards of us all. And thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied over with the pale cast of thought, and enterprise of great pith and moment. With this regard, their currents go awry and lose the name of action. Enter Guildenstern and Rosencrantz. Now, it's a puzzle to me why in any production of Hamlet I've never seen these men played with German accents. They come to him from Wittenberg. Their name is Guildenstern and Rosencrantz, but they talk very good English, and I don't get it. Anyway, yes. Anyway, he says to them, "Were you sent for?" They say, "Are you kidding? We love you, Hamlet baby. We came here from Wittenberg because your father died." He said, "Were you sent for? I need to know." "Oh, come on. Don't you believe that we did it because we felt sorry for you?" "I don't need comfort. I need honesty. Don't lie." And they give each other a look that gives them away. He says, "Okay." And they say, "We were sent for." Now here comes point number 2 about Hamlet and his depressions and his suicides. Because he says, when they say, "We were sent for," he says, "And I will tell you why." And you must remember that every word he says now is to spies that he knows will repeat everything to the king. "I have of late," he says, "I know not why, lost my mirth. And this great earth that is so beautiful is dull to me, and I don't enjoy the stars and the moon in heaven, and men please me not, nor do women, although I see you laugh." And they say, "No, no, no. We're sorry you feel so bad. We're sorry you're depressed," if they knew that word. "But we were laughing because there's a troupe of actors coming here." He says, "Troupe of actors? At Elsinore?" He says, "You know that theater group you liked in the town? Well, they've lost their lease. And they were hoping that they might get a little bit of engagement here on their way to someplace else." He said, "Bring them in." I must see them. And in they come. And he grabs the oldest member. He says, oh, please tell me that speech that you did so well. It's about Hecuba, I think. And he says, yes, I know it. He says, please say it. I haven't heard it for so long. And so he gets him to do the speech, and he does it brilliantly. And Hamlet says, listen, I have a commission for you. I think I'd like you to perform. Do you know the murder of Gonzago? And they said, murder of Gonzago? Oh, sure, that's an old, yes, sure. Do that, and I will give you a couple of little pantomime scenes. It won't be hard, and I'll make sure that the king, I know that everybody will be there, and you'll get some good notices. Polonius, see that the actors are well disposed. Out they go. Guildenstern, Rosencrantz, good to see you. Now I am alone. What a rogue and peasant slave am I. Is it not monstrous that this player here, in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit, that from her workings all his visage wand, tears in his eyes, a broken voice, his function suiting with forms to his conceit, and for nothing, for Hecuba. What's Hecuba to him? Or he to Hecuba? That he should weep for her. What would he do? Had he the motive and the cue for passion that I have? Oh, he would drown the stage with tears and cleave the general ear with horrid speech. He would make mad the guilty. And appall the free, confound the innocent, and amaze indeed the very faculty of eye and ear, and yet I, a dull and muddy-mentaled rascal, peak like Jana dreams, unpregnant of my cause, and can say nothing. Not for a king, upon whose property and most dear life a damned defeat was made. Am I a coward? It cannot be. But I am pigeon-livered and lack gall to make oppression bitter. Or ere this I would have fatted all the regent birds with this slave's awful, bloody body, villain, remorseless, lecherous, treacherous, thankless villain. Oh, vengeance. Oh, this is most brave. I, the son of a dear father murdered, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell, must like a whore unpack my heart with words, then fall to cursing like a drab, a scullion. Oh, fie on it. Fie. About my brain. Now, I have seen guilty creatures at a play, been struck so to the quick that presently they have proclaimed their malefaction. So murder, though it hath no tongue, will speak with most miraculous organ. I'll have these players play something like the murder of my father before my uncle, and I'll observe his looks, and if he but blench, I'll know my course. Now the spirit I've seen may be the devil. The devil is known to assume a pleasing shape, and perhaps in my weakness and my melancholy he abuses me to damn me. I'll have grounds more relative than this. The play's the thing wherein I will catch the conscience of the king. And he does. Great success. In the pantomime, somebody is pouring poison into the ear of a sleeping man, and the king yells, "Give me light! Get me out of here! Stop! Stop!" And he runs. Hamlet is ecstatic. Oh, you can't imagine the relief. The ghost was not lying to him. His uncle did kill his father. Oh my God. And then he gets a word from Guildenstern and Rosencrantz. The king is very upset. And he's told us to take you with us to England. And we'll see that everything will be taken care of. We'll get the luggage. We'll do everything. But you've got to go tonight. But your mother wants to see you to say goodbye before you go. All right, he says, I'll go. What the hell? And as he goes, he sees the king kneeling at an altar. Now, there was a belief, at least there is in this play, that if you're truly sorry for what you've done, you can ask God, in whatever form you consider him to be, higher power or whatever, to forgive you and take you into heaven. That's what the ghost is upset about. He died in his sleep. He couldn't do that. He is roasting for his sins that he couldn't ask forgiveness for because he didn't have time. And there he is, kneeling at an altar. And Hamlet comes down to the front of the stage, not up on the stairs the way he usually is, and he says, "Now might I do it, Pat? Now," while he's praying. Oh, now I will do it. And now he will go to heaven. Is that revenge? This would be scanned. A villain kills my father, and I, his sole son, do the same villain send to heaven. This is higher in salary, not revenge. He murdered my father grossly, full of bread, with his sins broad blown as lush as May. Where his account stands, who knows but heaven? Shall I take him while he is purging his soul? While he is fit and seasoned for his passage? No. No, up sword. Find some horrible way to take him when he's drunk, or swearing, or in his incestuous pleasure in bed, or some act which has no relish in it of salvation, and then trip him up so that his heels point to heaven and his soul is black and damned as hell, to which he goes. But mother's waiting and I must go see her, and up he goes. Well, now, there was an event I didn't talk about because he is very sassy. He's very excited right now, of course, because he knows that the king is guilty, and he's got to figure out what moment he can take to kill him so that he will be just as damned as his father was. And she says, "What's the matter?" He says, "What's the matter?" She says, what's your matter? Don't you know who I am? I said, yes, I know who you are. And he's just the sassiest little boy she's ever seen. And she says, well, what's going on? Are you going to murder me? And Polonius, who has been pouring poison into Ophelia's ear, never mind the garden story, that Hamlet is only after her body and that he doesn't love her. He's been telling her all these things and hiding and making her spy for him, and Hamlet knows it. And this Polonius yells, "Help, ho!" And Hamlet turns around. He says, "A rat! Dead for a ducat!" And she says, "What have you done?" He says, I don't know. Is it the king? And Polonius falls out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the first pure, impetuous thing he's ever done. Certainly he wouldn't do that at Wittenberg. They would learn how to fence, and they would know all the little things to do. They wouldn't just stab somebody, and he's done it. That's when he tells her, don't go to my uncle's bed. That's when he opens his mouth and gives her the 12-step way to heaven. But then he says one more thing. After he said good night a second time, he says, I must to England. Do you know that? There are letters sealed, and my two schoolfellows, who I would trust as I would an adder's fangs, they have the mandate to sweep my way and usher me to knavery. But let it work. It is great sport when the engineer is hoist by his own petard. It will go hard, but I will dig a yard under their mines and blow them to the moon. Oh, how sweet when in one line directly two crafts meet. Now, craft can mean plot. And there was a time when I changed the word more directly and said, when two plots meet. And that showed me something I never expected. We understand, you who have followed the scene with me, that the plot of the king and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern is met by his own plot, and his is going to win over them because they don't know he knows. But here is Mr. Shakespeare talking to us directly in one line of a play. He has made two plots meet, and he thinks it's very sweet to be that tricky. So I leave you, and he leaves his mother with that. Good night, mother. And now for the last moment, when he is standing on the pier, Guildenstern and Rosencrantz are looking after the luggage, and he is waiting for the boat to take them to England and see what he can do, which he does do. He sets them up. Don't worry about it. He does change the note, and he's got a signet ring from his father, and all the things will work so that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, as it says in the play. But meanwhile, there's a boat unloading soldiers. And he says to a captain who is free to talk to him, well, what's going on? He says, we're going to Poland. Young Fortinbras wants a piece of land in Poland, and we're going to go get it for him. He says, oh, is it that important? He says, no, it's nothing. We don't even know why he wants it. I think he wants it for commercial reasons. Because if Norway has a piece of Poland, they don't have to pay duty when they bring their stuff into the land. They could just unload the boat and in their land in Poland. It's like Danzig, which Hitler wanted. And he says, well, if it's not worth anything, the Poles are not going to fight you. He says, oh yes, they're already prepared. Their garrison is staffed. And the ground isn't big enough to bury everybody who's going to die there tomorrow. He says, and you're going? He says, sure, why not? Bye-bye. How all occasions to inform against me, he says to us, and spur my dull revenge. I do not know whether it be my animal oblivion or my craven scruple to think too precisely on each event? For you must know that any thought that's got more than one part has only one part wisdom and the rest is cowardice. I do not know why I live to say this thing is to do, and I have the cause, the strength, the will, and the means to do it. Examples on all sides exhort me. Witness this army with such expense and loss of life, exposing mortality and what is unsure, that is death, and danger dared, and for an eggshell, for nothing. How do I stand that has a father murdered and a mother stained? Excitements to my reason and my blood, which I let sleep, while to my shame I see the imminent death of thousands of men who go to their graves like beds for a fantasy and a trick of fame. Truly, to be great is not to sit until you have absolute surety that you're doing the right thing, but greatly to find quarrel in a straw if your honor is at stake. From now until I leave this earth, my thoughts be full of my blood. Or nothing worth. And he goes, and he acts, and he dies pouring the poison down that king's throat, knowing that the king has had no time to ask forgiveness for poisoning the queen, for poisoning the swords, for doing all the things he did. And he says the rest is silence, and he dies. He has found himself after much turmoil. Now, I ran into a kid, I didn't run into him, I met him, at a market in South Carolina after he saw us do Of Mice and Men in an English class. And he said, I have a question for you. I said, yes. He said, are actors people who have found themselves and play people who haven't found themselves? I leave you with that thought. Thank you for listening.
All right. My God.